vast darkness of space stretched endlessly in all directions, broken only by the cold light of distant stars. In this emptiness, a sight that would have terrified any civilized species slowly came into view. Ships, thousands upon thousands, of alien vessels moving together like a metal storm across the galaxy. The Catherine Empire's war fleet was massive beyond imagination. 100,000 ships of various sizes spread across space in perfect formation. Small fighter craft buzzed around enormous battleships like angry insects. Massive carriers held even more vessels in their bellies, ready to release death upon any world that dared to resist. At the center of this metal ocean floated the flagship Dominator. Its black hull was covered in weapon ports and armor plating, thick enough to stop nuclear weapons. Inside the ship's command center, Admiral Vex stood before a wall of screens showing his endless fleet. His 6 arms moved across control panels, while his 4 eyes scanned the data flowing past him. "Admiral," called out his communication officer, a younger Kethron with nervous movements, "we are approaching the human sector. Our scouts report a small colony on the 3rd planet of this system." Vex's mouth twisted into what his species considered a smile. "Humans," he said with disgust. "Such a young race. They have been in space for less than 300 of their years. Their weapons are primitive. Their ships are slow. This will not even be a proper battle." The Admiral had studied the reports about humanity. They were a species that seemed to prefer trade over war. Their colonies were small and peaceful. Their military was tiny compared to the great empires of the galaxy. Most importantly, they had never faced a real threat. The Catherine Empire had conquered over 200 species. Humans would be number 201. "Sir," another officer spoke up, "our forward scouts are detecting something unusual." "What is it?" Vex asked, not really interested. Nothing these primitive humans had could surprise him. "There is a single ship between our fleet and the human colony. It appears to be damaged and drifting without power." This got the Admiral's attention. He moved to the main display screen and saw the image his scouts were sending back. There, floating alone in the darkness, was a human vessel. It was much smaller than even his smallest destroyer, painted in dark gray that almost made it invisible against space. The ship looked battered, with scorch marks on its hull and no lights visible through its windows. "One ship?" Vex laughed, a sound like grinding metal. "One damaged ship stands against my entire fleet? What do they call this vessel?" The scanner operator checked his readings. "The name painted on the hull reads Reaper, sir." "Reaper," Vex repeated the human word slowly. "How appropriate. It will soon learn what death truly means." Inside the human ship, Captain Jake Morrison sat alone on the bridge. The lights were dimmed to almost nothing, and most of the control panels showed red warning lights. Jake was a tall man with gray hair and scars on his hands from years of military service. His uniform was simple blue fabric, nothing like the elaborate armor worn by alien commanders, but Jake's eyes were calm. Too calm for a man facing impossible odds. "Ghost," he said quietly to the empty bridge. "Are you ready?" A soft voice answered him, seeming to come from everywhere at once. "All systems are online, Captain. The evacuation of Terra Nova colony is complete. The Reaper is operating at full capacity despite external appearances." Jake nodded. Ghost was the ship's artificial intelligence more advanced than anything the galaxy had ever seen. The AI could think faster than any biological mind and control every system on the Reaper simultaneously. "How many ships are we facing?" Jake asked. "Exactly. 102-47 vessels of various classes," Ghost replied. The Catherine appear confident in their numerical advantage. Jake almost smiled. "They should be. In any normal situation, they would be right." The captain stood up and walked to the main window of the bridge. Outside, he could see the approaching alien fleet. Ships stretched from one edge of his vision to the other, their weapon ports glowing with deadly energy. Any sane person would have run away or surrendered immediately. Jake Morrison was not most people. He had commanded the Reaper for 5 years, but he had never been allowed to use its full capabilities. The ship was humanity's most classified secret, built with technology that even Earth scientists did not completely understand. It had been designed for one purpose: to face threats that should have been impossible to defeat. Ghost, open a channel to the Kethron fleet, Jake ordered. Channel, open, Captain. Jake's voice was broadcast across space to every ship in the alien armada. Kethron fleet, this is Captain Morrison of the Earth vessel Reaper. You are approaching a human colony. Turn around and leave this system immediately. On the flagship, Admiral Vex heard the transmission and laughed so hard his officers looked uncomfortable. Did you hear that? He called out to his bridge crew. One human and one broken ship is ordering us to leave. The Admiral activated his own communication system. Human Captain, I am Admiral Vex of the Kethron Empire. You are facing 100,000 ships of war. Surrender now, and we will make your death quick. Jake's reply was immediate and calm. I gave you a chance to leave peacefully. You chose not to take it. What can one ship do against my fleet? Vex demanded. Let me show you, Jake said simply. The captain walked back to his command chair and placed his hand on a panel that had been dark until now. The panel scanned his palm, recognized his identity, and activated systems that had been sleeping since the Reaper was built. Across the ship, hidden machinery came to life. The hull began to change color from dull gray to a deep black that seemed to absorb light itself. Weapon ports opened along the ship's surface, revealing technology that looked nothing like human engineering. Energy began to flow through circuits made from materials that did not exist anywhere else in the galaxy. The Kethron sensors immediately detected the change. Warning alarms began sounding on every ship in their fleet as their instruments registered energy readings that should have been impossible. What is happening? Admiral Vex demanded. What are those readings? His science officer, a nervous creature with shaking hands, checked his instruments 3 times before answering. Sir, the human ship is generating power levels equivalent to a small star. The energy signature is unlike anything in our databases. Vex stared at the Reaper on his main screen. The small human vessel no longer looked damaged or helpless. It looked dangerous in a way that made his survival instincts scream warnings. Impossible, he whispered. They are a primitive species. Their technology is centuries behind ours. But even as he spoke, Vex knew something was terribly wrong. The Kethron Empire had never encountered a ship that could generate such massive amounts of power. Their own largest battleships would have been destroyed instantly if they tried to channel that much energy through their systems. Admiral, his weapons officer called out. Should we attack? Vex hesitated for the first time in his military career. Every instinct told him that the small human ship was somehow more dangerous than it appeared, but he had 100,000 vessels under his command. No single ship, no matter how advanced, could possibly stand against such overwhelming numbers. All ships, he ordered, target the human vessel, fire a warning shot, show them the power of the Kethron Empire. 50 of his destroyers turned their main guns toward the Reaper and fired simultaneously. Beams of pure energy, each one capable of melting through a mountain, struck the human ship from all directions. The weapons hit their target perfectly. For a moment, the Reaper was surrounded by explosions bright enough to light up the entire system. When the light faded, the human ship was completely undamaged. Jake's voice came across the communication channel again, still calm, still confident. Is that the best you can do? Admiral Vex stared at his screens in shock. 50 direct hits from destroyer-class weapons had not even scratched the human vessel's hull. The Reaper floated in space as if nothing had happened at all. How is this possible? He whispered. Jake Morrison stood up from his command chair and looked out at the massive alien fleet surrounding his ship. He had hoped they would listen to reason and leave peacefully. Now there was only one option left. Ghost, he said quietly. Activate all weapons systems. It's time to show them what human engineering can really do. Weapons online, Captain, Ghost replied. Shall I begin with the entropy cannon? Yes, Jake said. Let's make this educational. The silence that followed the failed attack was deafening. Across the Kethron fleet, thousands of alien warriors stared at their screens in disbelief. Their most powerful weapons had struck the human ship directly, yet it floated in space without a single scratch on its dark hull. Admiral Vex felt something he had not experienced in decades of conquest. Fear. His 4 eyes remained fixed on the Reaper as he tried to understand what he was seeing. The small human vessel should have been nothing but floating debris by now. "Science officer," he barked. "Explain to me how that ship survived." The nervous Kethran checked his instruments again, his hands shaking as he worked. "Admiral, our sensors show the human ship absorbed all the energy from our weapons. It did not deflect the attacks or use shields to block them. It simply absorbed the energy completely." "That is impossible," Vex growled. "No material in the galaxy can absorb that much energy without being destroyed." "Sir," another officer interrupted, "the human ship is powering up some kind of weapon system. Energy readings are climbing beyond our measurement capabilities." On the bridge of the Reaper, Jake Morrison stood calmly before the main control panel. His fingers moved across controls that looked deceptively simple, but each button controlled technology that had taken humanity's best scientists 50 years to develop. "Ghost," he said quietly. "Target the nearest cluster of destroyers. Make it clean." "Targeting 17 vessels in formation Delta 7, the AI replied. "Entropy cannon, charged and ready to fire." Jake paused for a moment, thinking about the aliens he was about to kill. He felt no anger toward them, no hatred, but they had chosen to threaten human civilians, and that could not be allowed. His finger pressed down on the firing control. The Reaper's main weapon did not fire a beam of light or a projectile like normal ship weapons. Instead, it released something far more terrifying. A pulse that traveled at the speed of light and affected matter at the most basic level possible. The pulse reached the 17 Kethran destroyers instantly. For a split second, nothing seemed to happen. Then the ship simply began to fall apart, not exploding, not burning, but dissolving as the molecular bonds holding their hulls together stopped working. Admiral Vex watched in horror as 17 of his most powerful warships turned into clouds of loose atoms floating in space. The crews inside never had time to scream. One moment they were alive and preparing for battle. The next moment they no longer existed. "What kind of weapon was that?" he whispered. His science officer was frantically checking readings, his voice high with panic. "Admiral, the human weapon appears to have disrupted the atomic structure of our ships. It made their matter come apart at the molecular level." The communication channel crackled to life again. Jake Morrison's calm voice filled the bridge of every Kethran ship. "You have seen what one shot from my weapon can do. I am giving you one final chance to leave this system. Take your fleet and go home." Admiral Vex felt his pride burning inside his chest. He was the greatest military commander in Kethran history. He had conquered entire star systems and brought dozens of species under the Empire's control. He would not be intimidated by one human in one ship, no matter how advanced their weapons might be. "All ships," he commanded across the fleet communication system. "Concentrate fire on the human vessel. Every ship, every weapon, destroy it now." The response was immediate and overwhelming. Nearly 100,000 alien warships turned their weapons toward the Reaper. The space around the human vessel lit up like a new star as thousands of energy beams, missiles, and projectile weapons struck it from every direction. The attack continued for 30 seconds. When it finally stopped, the Reaper remained exactly where it had been, completely undamaged. But now something new was happening to the human ship. Small objects began to separate from the Reaper's hull. At first they looked like debris, but as they moved away from the main ship, their true nature became clear. They were fighter craft, but unlike any fighters the Kethran had ever seen. The human drones were sleek and black, about the size of the aliens' own fighters, but moving with impossible speed and precision. They did not launch from bays or hangars like normal fighters. Instead, they seemed to phase into existence directly from the ship's hull, appearing out of nowhere like ghosts. "Ghost," Jake said as he watched the drones deploy. "How many can we field?" "Current manufacturing capacity allows for continuous production of 1,200 drone fighters," the AI replied. "Each drone carries the equivalent firepower of a destroyer-class vessel." Jake nodded. The drones were another piece of technology that even he did not fully understand. They were built using matter manipulation technology that could create complex machines from raw materials in seconds. Each drone was controlled by a fragment of Ghost's artificial intelligence, making them faster and more accurate than any biological pilot could ever be. The Kethran fleet watched in growing fear as the UL human drones spread out across space. There were not many of them compared to the aliens' vast numbers, but something about the way they moved made experienced warriors nervous. They flew in perfect formation without any communication, turning and diving as if they shared a single mind. Admiral, his tactical officer called out. The human fighters are approaching our outer ships. Should we launch our own fighters to intercept? Yes, Vex ordered. Launch all fighters. Show these humans that numbers matter more than technology. Thousands of Kethran fighter craft poured out of the fleet's carriers. They outnumbered the human drones by more than 10 to 1 and moved to surround them completely. The alien pilots were confident in their skills and eager to prove themselves against the mysterious human technology. The battle began as soon as the two forces met. It was over in less than 5 minutes. The human drones moved through the Kethran fighters like a hot knife through ice. Their weapons were precise and deadly, each shot destroying an enemy fighter with no wasted energy. But more terrifying was their speed and coordination. They moved in patterns that seemed to predict what the alien pilots would do before the pilots themselves knew. Every time a group of Kethran fighters tried to surround a human drone, they found themselves flying into carefully planned ambushes. The drones would disappear and reappear in different locations, using some kind of short-range teleportation technology that made them nearly impossible to target. Within minutes, thousands of alien fighters were destroyed while not a single human drone was even damaged. Admiral Vex watched the slaughter with growing desperation. How are they doing this? He demanded. How can so few fighters defeat so many? His tactical officer was studying the battle data, trying to understand what he was seeing. Admiral, the human drones appear to be sharing information instantaneously. They are not fighting as individual craft, but as a single unit with multiple bodies. Our pilots cannot match their coordination. The human drones finished destroying the last of the Kethran fighters and began moving toward the main fleet. Their weapons were small compared to the battleships they were approaching, but after what Vex had already seen, he was no longer confident. That size mattered. Jake Morrison's voice came across the communication channel again. Admiral Vex, you have now lost 17 destroyers and approximately 8,000 fighter craft. Your remaining ships can leave this system safely if you withdraw now. Vex was breathing heavily, his four eyes wide with a mixture of fear and rage. Everything he thought he knew about warfare was being proven wrong by this single human ship, but he still had nearly 100,000 vessels under his command. Surely that had to count for something. Human captain, he replied, trying to keep his voice steady. You may have superior technology, but you are still just one ship. We will overwhelm you through sheer numbers. You cannot fight us all. You are welcome to try, Jake replied calmly. Admiral Vex looked around his bridge at his officers. They were all staring at him, waiting for orders. Some looked frightened, others confused. All of them were beginning to doubt whether their massive fleet could win this battle. But Vex was the admiral of the Kethran Empire's greatest war fleet. He would not retreat from a single enemy ship, no matter how dangerous it appeared. All vessels, he commanded. Close formation and advance on the human ship. We will ram it if necessary. No single vessel can stand against the combined mass of our entire fleet. As his order was carried out, Vex wondered if he was making the right choice. But it was too late to change his mind now. The battle would continue, and one way or another, it would end soon. Admiral Vex stood on his command bridge, watching his massive fleet move into attack formation. The sight should have filled him with confidence. Nearly 100,000 warships advancing together was a force that could destroy entire planets. Yet somehow, looking at the single human vessel floating calmly in space ahead of them, he felt only growing dread. Admiral, his intelligence officer called out urgently. I have been reviewing our files on the human species. There are some disturbing facts we may have overlooked. What kind of facts, Vex demanded, not taking his eyes off the Reaper. The intelligence officer's hands trembled as he read from his data pad. Sir, our initial reports focused on human trade colonies and peaceful settlements. But I have found military records that paint a very different picture of this species. Explain quickly, Vex ordered as his fleet continued to close the distance to the human ship. Admiral, humans have been at war with each other for their entire recorded history. Not occasional conflicts like most species, but constant, continuous warfare spanning thousands of years. They have fought wars using everything from simple clubs to weapons that can destroy entire cities. Vex felt his stomach tighten. Continue. Their planet Earth has never known true peace, sir. While other species were learning to work together, humans were perfecting the art of killing each other. They have created weapons designed to destroy their own kind by the millions. The Admiral turned away from the main screen to look at his officer. Are you saying we underestimated their military capabilities? Sir, I am saying we may have made a terrible mistake. The reports show that humans do not build weapons to fight equals. They build weapons to fight enemies who are stronger, faster, and more numerous than themselves. Every human military technology was designed with the assumption that they would be the weaker force in any conflict. On the bridge of the Reaper, Jake Morrison was having a very different conversation with his AI companion. Ghost, he said quietly. Show me the tactical analysis of their fleet. The main display screen lit up with a detailed view of the approaching Kethron armada. Red markers appeared over dozens of ships, highlighting structural weaknesses and critical systems that Ghost had identified. Captain, the AI said in its calm, mechanical voice, the Kethran vessels are built for overwhelming enemies through superior numbers. Their individual ships are heavily armed, but not heavily armored. They expect to win battles quickly through coordinated attacks. What are their weaknesses? Jake asked. Their formation tactics require ships to stay close together for maximum firepower. This makes them vulnerable to area effect weapons. Additionally, their power systems are not shielded against electromagnetic interference. Their ships rely on constant communication with their command vessel to maintain coordination. Jake nodded slowly. So if we disrupt their communications and hit them with the right kind of weapon, their formation would collapse into chaos and individual ships would become easy targets, Ghost confirmed. Jake walked to his weapons control station. The Reaper had dozens of different weapon systems, each one designed for a specific type of combat situation. He had used the entropy cannon to make a point, but now it was time to show the aliens what human military engineering could really accomplish. Ghost, charge the reality bomb, he ordered. Captain, are you certain? That weapon has never been tested in actual combat conditions. I am certain, Jake replied firmly. Target the center of their formation. We are going to turn their greatest strength into their greatest weakness. Back on the Kethran flagship, Admiral Vex was receiving more disturbing reports from his intelligence team. Sir, the officer continued reading, human military doctrine is based on something they call total war. When humans fight, they do not seek honor or glory. They seek complete victory by any means necessary. They are willing to sacrifice anything to ensure their enemies are completely destroyed. Impossible, Vex muttered. No civilized species fights that way. Sir, according to these records, humans once fought a war that lasted 6 years and killed over 50 million of their own people. They created weapons that could poison entire continents and bombs that could level entire cities. They only stopped when one side was completely unable to continue fighting. Vex felt ice forming in his veins. How long ago was this war? Less than 100 years ago, sir. By galactic standards, it was yesterday. The Admiral looked back at the human ship on his screen. Suddenly, the Reaper did not look like the vessel of a peaceful species. It looked like exactly what it was, a weapon built by creatures who had spent millennia learning how to kill efficiently. Admiral, his communication officer interrupted. We are receiving another transmission from the human captain. Put it through, Vex ordered. Jake Morrison's voice filled the bridge once again, but this time there was something different in his tone. It was still calm, but now there was an edge of steel beneath the words. Admiral Vex, Jake said, I want you to understand something. You think you are facing a primitive species with inferior technology. You are wrong. You are facing a species that has never known peace. Every weapon on this ship was designed by people who spent their entire lives thinking about how to destroy enemies who outnumber them. The human captain paused, letting his words sink in. We do not build ships to fight fair battles, Admiral. We build ships to win unfair battles. We build them assuming that we will be outnumbered, outgunned, and facing an enemy who is stronger than us in every way. The Reaper was not designed to fight other human ships. It was designed to fight gods. Admiral Vex felt his confidence crumbling. What do you want, he asked. I want you to take your fleet and leave this system, Jake replied. I want you to go back to your empire and tell them that humans are not prey. We are predators who have been pretending to be sheep because we thought it would be better for everyone that way. And if we refuse? Jake's reply was immediate and chilling. Then I will show you why my species conquered our own planet before we ever left it. The Reaper began to change again. Its hull shifted from black to a deep red color that seemed to pulse with inner light. New weapon ports opened along its surface, revealing technology that looked nothing like the devices the Kethran recognized as weapons. Ghost, Jake said quietly. Activate the reality bomb. Target the center of their formation. Reality bomb armed and ready, the AI confirmed. Warning, this weapon will create a localized space-time distortion. The effects may be unpredictable. Fire. The Reaper released its most devastating weapon. Unlike the entropy cannon, which affected matter at the molecular level, the reality bomb affected space itself. A sphere of twisted space-time expanded from the human ship, moving outward at incredible speed. When the distortion reached the Kethran fleet, physics itself seemed to break down. Ships that had been moving forward suddenly found themselves moving backward. Vessels that were flying in formation crashed into each other as up and down became meaningless concepts. The tightly packed alien armada turned into a chaotic mess of spinning, colliding ships. Admiral Vex watched in horror as his perfectly organized fleet tore itself apart. Ships designed to work together in close formation became death traps as the reality bomb turned their coordination into catastrophe. Damage report, he shouted over the sounds of alarms and emergency broadcasts. Admiral, his tactical officer replied, his voice shaking. We have lost over 30,000 ships. They were not destroyed by enemy fire. They were destroyed by colliding with each other when the space distortion hit our formation. Vex stared at the chaos on his screens. In less than 1 minute, the human ship had eliminated nearly 1/3 of his fleet without firing a single conventional weapon. The aliens had not been outgunned or outmaneuvered. They had been outsmarted by an enemy who understood warfare in ways they never imagined. Sir, his communication officer called out, we are receiving emergency signals from ships throughout the fleet. Many captains are requesting permission to retreat. Admiral Vex looked at the Reaper floating calmly in the middle of the destruction it had caused. The human ship was completely undamaged, while his once mighty armada was in ruins. For the first time in his military career, Admiral Vex began to consider the possibility that he might lose this battle. Human captain, he said into his communication system. What are you? Jake Morrison's reply came back immediately, and the words would haunt the Admiral's dreams for the rest of his life. We are what happens when a species spends 10,000 years learning how to kill each other, and then decides to work together instead. Admiral Vex stood among the wreckage of his pride. The command bridge of his flagship was filled with the sounds of emergency alarms and panicked voices reporting massive casualties. Through the main viewing screen, he could see the twisted remains of thousands of his ships floating in space like broken toys. The human vessel Reaper sat in the center of the destruction, completely untouched. Its dark red hull pulsed with energy that made Vex's eyes hurt to look at directly. In less than an hour, this single enemy ship had reduced his mighty fleet from 100,000 vessels to fewer than 70,000. Admiral, his chief tactical officer, approached with visible fear in his movements. The captains are requesting immediate retreat. Many ships are already preparing to jump to hyperspace without orders. Vex slammed his 6 fists on the command console. No, I will not be defeated by one primitive human ship. We still outnumber them 70,000 to 1. That has to count for something. His science officer looked up from his instruments with shaking hands. Sir, I have been analyzing the human weapons. Each one operates on principles that should be impossible. They are not just advanced technology. They are using physics that we do not understand. Explain, Vex demanded. The first weapon dissolved our ships at the molecular level. The second weapon manipulated space and time itself. Admiral, this is not merely superior technology. This is technology that treats the fundamental laws of reality as suggestions rather than rules. Vex turned to stare at the Reaper again. The human captain had been silent since the reality bomb attack, but somehow that silence was more frightening than any threat. What was the human planning next? On the bridge of the Reaper, Jake Morrison was studying tactical displays showing the remaining Kethran fleet. The aliens had spread their ships out to avoid another formation-destroying attack, but this had made them vulnerable in different ways. Ghost, he said quietly. Analysis of their current position? The Kethran have learned from our previous attacks, the AI replied. They are maintaining distance from each other and moving in unpredictable patterns. However, their scattered formation has reduced their combined firepower and made communication between ships more difficult. Jake nodded. What about their morale? Intercepted. Communication suggests that panic is spreading through their fleet. Many ship captains are questioning Admiral Vex's orders. The alien fleet is beginning to fracture psychologically as well as physically. Good, Jake said. But they still have the numbers to overwhelm us if they coordinate properly. We need to end this before they figure out a new strategy. Ghost paused for a moment, processing millions of calculations. Captain, I have detected something concerning. The Kethran flagship is charging what appears to be a planet-killing weapon. Their target seems to be the Terra Nova colony. Jake felt ice form in his stomach. They are going to hold the colonists hostage. It appears. So, Captain, Admiral Vex may be planning to force us into a vulnerable position by threatening civilian lives. Jake's face hardened. The Kethran Admiral had just made a fatal mistake. Threatening human civilians was the one thing guaranteed to make Jake abandon all restraint. Ghost, he said in a voice cold as deep space. Activate the phase shift drive. It is time to show them our final surprise. Admiral Vex watched his weapons officers prepare the World Breaker, the Kethran Empire's most powerful weapon. The massive cannon could crack a planet's surface and kill every living thing on it within hours. It was meant to be used only as a last resort, but these were desperate times. Human Captain, he broadcast on all frequencies. I am targeting your colony world with our planet destroyer. Surrender yourself or watch millions of your people die. The response came back immediately, but Jake Morrison's voice had changed completely. Gone was the calm, professional tone. Now there was something in the human's voice that made Vex's survival instincts scream warnings. Admiral, Jake said, and each word seemed to carry the weight of a death sentence. You have just made the last mistake you will ever make. The Reaper began to change in ways that defied everything the Kethran knew about physics. The ship's solid hull started to become transparent, like a ghost fading from reality. Then it began to flicker, existing and not existing in rapid succession. What is happening to their ship? Vex demanded. His science officer stared at his instruments in complete confusion. Admiral, according to our sensors, the human vessel is existing in multiple dimensions simultaneously. It is phasing in and out of our reality. That is impossible. Sir, the readings are clear. The human ship is now partially existing in what we might call parallel realities. Our weapons cannot hit a target that is not entirely in our dimension. Vex watched in growing horror as the Reaper became completely transparent. The ship was still there, still visible, but somehow not quite real anymore. It was like trying to grab smoke with bare hands. Fire all weapons at the human ship, Vex ordered desperately. Every remaining Kethran vessel turned their weapons toward the ghostly Reaper. Thousands of energy beams and missiles struck the space where the human ship floated. But every attack passed harmlessly through the vessel, as if it were not there at all. Jake Morrison's voice came across the communication channels again, but now it seemed to come from everywhere at once, as if the human captain was speaking from multiple realities. You threatened human civilians, Admiral. That was your first mistake. Your second mistake was thinking that we built the Reaper with only 3 dimensions in mind. The ghostly human ship began to move through the Kethran fleet, passing through alien vessels like they were made of air. But as it moved, something terrible began to happen to the ships it touched. When the Reaper passed through a Kethran destroyer, the alien vessel simply stopped working. Its engines shut down, its weapons powered off, and its life support systems failed. The ship became a lifeless hulk floating in space. "How is it doing that?" Vex whispered. "Admiral," his science officer reported in a voice filled with terror. "When the human ship phases through our vessels, it is somehow disrupting their molecular structure from the inside. It is killing our ships from within." Jake's voice continued to echo through space. "The phase shift drive allows us to exist in multiple realities at once. We can attack you from dimensions you cannot even perceive. Every ship we touch will die, and there is nothing you can do to stop us." The Reaper continued its ghostly hunt through the alien fleet. Ship after ship fell silent as the human vessel passed through them, like a plague made of shadow and light. The aliens could not fight back, could not defend themselves, could not even run away fast enough. Admiral Vex realized that his fleet was being systematically executed. "All ships," he broadcast frantically. "Ram the human vessel. All ships at maximum speed. Even if we cannot hurt it with weapons, we can destroy it through collision." Thousands of Kethran ships turned toward the Reaper and accelerated to ramming speed. It was a desperate tactic, but Vex reasoned that even advanced human technology could not survive the impact of thousands of ships hitting it simultaneously. The alien vessels reached the Reaper's position and struck it from all directions at once. But instead of causing an explosion, the Kethran ships simply passed through the human vessel like it was made of mist. The aliens found themselves ramming empty space while the Reaper continued its work of destruction. "It is not working," Vex's tactical officer reported. "Our ships cannot make physical contact with the human vessel." "Then how do we fight something we cannot touch?" Vex demanded. "Admiral," came a small voice from his communication station, "I do not think we can." Vex stared at the tactical display showing his fleet. Red markers indicated dead ships, and the number was growing rapidly. The Reaper was systematically moving through his armada, killing everything it touched. At this rate, his entire fleet would be destroyed within the hour. In desperation, he activated his most powerful weapon. The World Breaker had finished charging, and its targeting systems were locked onto the human colony of Terra Nova. "Human Captain," he broadcast, "I am firing on your colony world now. Even if you destroy my fleet, millions of your people will die." Admiral Vex pressed the firing button, sending a planet-killing beam of energy toward the helpless human world. But as the weapon fired, the ghostly Reaper suddenly appeared directly in front of the Kethran flagship. The human ship had somehow moved from the outer edge of the fleet to the center in an instant. Jake Morrison's voice came over the communication system one final time, and now it carried the promise of absolute destruction. "Admiral Vex, you just fired on human civilians. Now you get to learn what happens when you make humanity truly angry." The Reaper began to phase back into normal reality, but as it did so, something impossible happened. The human ship materialized partially inside the Kethran flagship, occupying the same space as the alien vessel's bridge. Admiral Vex found himself staring directly at a section of the Reaper's hull that had appeared in the middle of his command center. Through the transparent metal, he could see Captain Jake Morrison looking back at him with cold, merciless eyes. The human captain raised his hand and placed it on what appeared to be a weapon control panel. Vex realized with absolute terror that the Reaper's main gun was now inside his ship, pointed directly at him. "Goodbye, Admiral," Jake said quietly. The entropy cannon fired at point-blank range inside the Kethran flagship. Admiral Vex had one brief moment to understand what was happening before his molecules simply stopped holding together. The bridge, the command crew, and the Admiral himself dissolved into harmless atoms that scattered into space. The Reaper phased back to normal reality, leaving behind a massive hole where the flagship's command center used to be. The mighty Dominator, pride of the Kethran fleet, died instantly as its main power systems failed, and its hull cracked open like an egg. Across the alien armada, Thousands of ship captains watched their command vessel break apart. The sight broke, something fundamental in the Kethran fleet. Admiral Vex had been more than just their commander. He had been their symbol of invincibility. Now he was dead, killed by a human who had materialized inside his own ship like a ghost. Captain Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of the Reaper, watching the chaos spreading through the enemy fleet. Ships were breaking formation, some trying to flee while others fired randomly into space. The proud Kethran armada was falling apart as panic replaced discipline. "Ghost," Jake said calmly. "How many ships remain?" "Approximately 43,000 vessels are still operational," the AI replied. "However, their command structure has collapsed. Individual captains are making independent decisions without coordination." Jake nodded. The death of Admiral Vex had been necessary, but now came the most important part of the battle. It was not enough to simply win. He had to send a message that would prevent future attacks on human space. "Open a communication channel to all remaining Kethran ships," he ordered. "Channel open, Captain." Jake's voice reached every alien vessel in the system. When he spoke, there was no anger in his tone, no hatred. There was something far more frightening, the calm certainty of absolute victory. "Kethran Fleet, this is Captain Morrison. Your admiral is dead. Your flagship is destroyed. You came here with 100,000 ships, and now fewer than half remain. You have a choice to make." On dozens of alien bridges, ship captains listened, with growing fear. Some had already begun charging their hyperspace drives, desperate to escape the system. Others sat frozen, waiting to hear what the terrifying human would say next. "I am going to allow some of you to leave," Jake continued. "Not all of you. That would send the wrong message. But enough to carry word back to your empire about what happened here." A Kethran captain named Drex, now the senior surviving officer in the fleet, found his voice. "Human, what do you want from us?" Jake's reply was immediate. "I want you to understand what you faced here today. You did not lose this battle because of bad luck or poor planning. You lost because you fundamentally misunderstood what humans are." The Reaper began moving slowly through the scattered alien fleet. Ships moved aside like frightened animals, unwilling to risk drawing the attention of the deadly human vessel. "Your intelligence reports told you that humans were a peaceful species," Jake said. "Young, primitive, weak. You were wrong on all counts. We are not peaceful. We have simply chosen to restrain ourselves because we thought it was better for the galaxy." On his bridge, Captain Drex checked his sensors and felt his blood turn cold. The human ship was heading directly toward his vessel. "Human captain, we surrender. We will leave your system immediately." "I know you will," Jake replied. "But first you need to understand what you are surrendering to." The Reaper stopped directly in front of Drex's ship. At this close range, the alien captain could see details of the human vessel that had been invisible from a distance. The hull was covered in weapon ports that looked like nothing in any database. Strange energy patterns flowed across its surface like living things. It was beautiful and terrifying at the same time. "Ghost," Jake said quietly. "Show them the manufacturing bay." A section of the Reaper's hull became transparent, revealing the interior of the ship. Captain Drex gasped as he saw massive machines working at incredible speed, building new drones and weapons from raw materials. In the time he watched, dozens of new fighter craft were assembled and launched. "The Reaper is not just a warship," Jake explained. "It is a mobile factory capable of building an entire fleet. If I chose to, I could stay in this system and construct enough ships to conquer your entire empire." The alien captain stared at the impossible technology. "How long would that take?" he whispered. "Approximately 6 months," Jake replied matter-of-factly. "But that would be wasteful. I prefer to solve problems efficiently." The Reaper moved away from Drex's ship and began systematically destroying other vessels in the fleet. But Jake was not killing randomly. He was carefully selecting which ships to destroy and which to spare, creating a specific pattern that would maximize the psychological impact. "I am destroying your largest and most powerful vessels," Jake announced. "Your battleships, carriers, and heavy cruisers will not return home. Only your smaller ships will survive to carry my message. Captain Drex watched in helpless horror as the human ship methodically hunted down the fleet's capital ships. Each attack was swift and precise. The Reaper would phase into normal space, fire a single shot, and watch another massive alien warship dissolve into atoms. "Why are you doing this?" Drex demanded. "We already surrender." Jake's voice carried across space with the weight of absolute authority. "Because your empire needs to understand the difference between defeating humans and making humans angry. Today you made us angry." The systematic destruction continued for another hour. When it was finished, exactly 1,000 Kethran ships remained out of the original 100,000. They were all small vessels, scouts, frigates, and light cruisers. Nothing that could threaten a human colony, but enough to carry survivors back to Kethran space. "Captain Drex," Jake said, addressing the alien directly, "you are now in command of the survivors. You will return to your empire and deliver my message exactly as I give it to you." "I will do as you command," Drex replied, his voice shaking. "Tell your leaders that humans are not the peaceful traitors they believed us to be. We are a species that spent 10,000 years perfecting the art of warfare against our own kind. Every weapon we build is designed to fight enemies stronger, faster, and more numerous than ourselves." Jake paused, letting his words sink in. "Tell them that the Reaper is not our most powerful ship. It is simply the only one we thought necessary to send against your fleet. Tell them that Earth has dozens of ships like this one and hundreds more under construction." This was not entirely true, but the aliens did not need to know that. Fear would accomplish what treaties could not. "Tell them that if they attack human colonies again, we will not send a single ship to fight them. We will come with our entire fleet, and we will not stop until their empire is nothing but empty space and bad memories." Captain Drex felt sick as he imagined what dozens of ships like the Reaper could do to his homeworlds. "Human Captain, surely we can reach some kind of agreement. The Kethran Empire does not wish to be your enemy." "That is exactly the message I wanted you to take home," Jake replied. "The choice is yours. Leave us alone and we will leave you alone. Attack us again, and learn what happens when humanity decides that restraint is no longer necessary." The surviving Kethran ships began activating their hyperspace drives, desperate to escape the system. But before they could jump, Jake had one final message. "Captain Drex, there is one more thing your empire needs to know. Today, you faced one human defending one colony. We have thousands of colonies scattered across the galaxy and millions of humans willing to defend them. If your empire is thinking about testing our resolve elsewhere, remember what happened here." The alien captain nodded frantically. "I will remember, human captain. My empire will remember." "See that they do," Jake said simply. The 1,000 surviving Kethran ships jumped to hyperspace, carrying with them recordings of the battle and the terrifying knowledge that humanity was far more dangerous than anyone had imagined. Jake Morrison stood alone on the bridge of the Reaper, watching the empty space where the alien fleet had been. The immediate threat was over, but he knew this was just the beginning. Word of the battle would spread across the galaxy, and humanity would face new challenges. "Ghost," he said quietly. "Set course for Terra Nova. Let's make sure the colonists are safe." "Course laid in, Captain. Estimated arrival time is 2 hours." As the Reaper moved toward the human colony, Jake reflected on what he had accomplished. He had won an impossible battle and sent a message that would echo across the galaxy. Humanity was no longer the weak, peaceful species that others could prey upon. They were predators pretending to be sheep, and today the pretense had ended. The galaxy would never be the same. The sky turned black on a normal Tuesday morning, not from clouds or storms, but from the massive ships that appeared without warning. They hung over every major city on Earth, dark and silent for exactly 1 hour. People stood in streets, looking up. Some took pictures, some prayed, some ran. Captain James Walker watched it all happen from Moonbase Echo, a secret military base hidden on the far side of the moon. The base wasn't on any official maps. Only 50 people knew it existed. Now, those 50 people watched their home planet through screens and cameras as the end began. "What are they?" asked Lieutenant Mark Davis, standing next to Walker in the control room. His hands gripped the edge of the console so hard his knuckles turned white. "I don't know," Walker said. His voice was calm, but his heart raced. "But they're not here to make friends." After that silent hour, it started. Green beams shot down from the ships, not destroying buildings or killing people, something worse. The beams swept through crowds, and the people who were hit changed. They didn't die. They kept walking and talking, but something was missing. Their eyes became empty. Their faces stopped showing feelings. They became shells of who they were before. "They're taking their minds," said Dr. Emma Reed, the base's head scientist. She pointed to readings on her screen. "These energy patterns, they're extracting neural data, memories, personalities, everything." Walker, Reed, and the others watched, helplessly as the aliens, the Dominion they called themselves in broadcasts that took over every communication channel, swept across Earth. Country after country fell silent. Armies fought back for the first day. By the second day, those same soldiers marched in perfect lines, their minds gone, now working for the invaders. 7 billion people, whispered Sam Torres, the civilian engineer who had been visiting the base when the attack started. 7 billion minds harvested. Walker gathered his people in the main hall on the third day. 50 faces looked at him, scared, angry, lost. The last free humans in the solar system. "They don't know we're here," he told them. "That's our only advantage right now. Our base is shielded. Our communications are secure. We're invisible to them." "So what?" someone called out. "We just hide here until our food runs out? Until we die?" Walker shook his head. "We fight back, somehow." Dr. Reed spoke up. "I've been studying their signals, their technology. It's not just taking memories. It's uploading human minds into their network. They're using us as processing power." The room fell silent. "You mean everyone's still alive, in some way?" Davis asked. Reed nodded. "Fragmented, scattered across their systems. But yes, the essence of who they were still exists." A small hope flickered in the darkness. For the next 3 months, Moonbase Echo changed. The research station became a fortress. Everyone learned to fight. They rationed food and power. They took turns sleeping, so someone was always watching Earth, always listening to Dominion communications. Reed worked day and night, studying the alien technology from intercepted signals. Walker often found her asleep at her desk, surrounded by notes and diagrams. "I think I found something," she told him one night, her eyes red from lack of sleep. "The way their system works, it's not designed for human minds." "What do you mean?" Walker asked. "Human consciousness is messy, creative, unpredictable." She pointed to patterns on her screen. "Their system wants order, control, but the human minds inside are creating tiny glitches." Hope sparked in Walker's chest. "Can we use that?" Reed smiled for the first time in months. "I think we can." They began sending small drones to Earth, carefully avoiding Dominion patrols. The drones brought back data, samples of Dominion technology, and something unexpected, proof of resistance. "There are people the mind harvesting doesn't work on," Davis reported after reviewing drone footage. "Small groups hiding in remote areas. People with certain brain conditions or injuries seem immune." Walker watched footage of a woman leading a small group through the ruins of a city evading Dominion patrols. Her name was Anna, according to the intel they gathered. She had survived a serious head injury just before the invasion. Something about her brain wiring protected her. "We need to contact them," Walker decided. It took weeks of careful planning. They used a modified drone to drop a secure communication device near Anna's group. When they finally connected, her face appeared on their screen. Tired, scarred, but determined. "There are more like us," she told them. "Not many, but we're fighting. We can disrupt their ground operations, but we can't stop what they're doing with the captured minds." "We might be able to," Reed said, stepping forward. "But we need to get to one of their harvester ships." Anna's group had been studying Dominion patrol patterns. Walker's team had been analyzing their technology. Together, they began forming a plan. It would be dangerous, perhaps impossible, but it was the only chance for humanity. 6 months after the invasion, Walker called his team together again. "Tomorrow we fight back," he told them. Dr. Reed has created a code that could wake up the captured minds, create a cascade failure in their network, but we need to upload it directly to their main harvester ship. The room was silent. Everyone knew what this meant. A suicide mission for whoever went. "I'll go," Walker said. "I need 3 volunteers." Every hand in the room went up. He chose Reed because she understood the code better than anyone. Davis for his combat skills. Torres for his engineering knowledge. The rest would stay behind to maintain the base, humanity's last refuge if the mission failed. That night, Walker stood alone in the observation room, looking at Earth. From the moon, you couldn't see the devastation. It still looked beautiful. Blue, oceans, white clouds, green and brown land. Home. "We're still here," he whispered to the planet below. "And tomorrow we start taking you back." As the Earth continued its silent spin, the last free humans prepared for a mission that would either save their species or end the last resistance. The Dominion had tried to erase humanity, but they had made one crucial mistake. They had left the most dangerous humans free. Captain James Walker turned away from the view of Earth and walked to the hangar where their stolen Dominion shuttle waited. Tomorrow, they would remind the invaders why humans should never be underestimated. The stolen Dominion shuttle was small and cramped. It smelled strange, like metal and something sweet that wasn't quite honey. Walker, Reed, Davis, and Torres sat in uncomfortable seats designed for bodies not quite human. "Are you sure you can fly this thing?" Walker asked Torres, who sat at the controls. Torres nodded, his hands moving over the strange symbols that glowed on the panel. "I've been studying their systems for months. It's weird, but I can handle it." The plan was simple but dangerous. They would pretend to be a Dominion scout ship returning from patrol. Reed had copied the codes they needed from intercepted signals. They would dock with one of the massive harvester ships that hung over what used to be New York City. Then, they would fight their way to the central neural core and upload Reed's code. "If this works," Reed said, looking at the small device in her hand that held the code, "it could wake up millions of minds at once. The system won't be able to handle it." "And if it doesn't work?" Davis asked, checking his weapon. Reed's face was grim. "Then we die, and humanity ends with us." The shuttle shook as it left the moon's surface. Earth grew larger in their view screen, beautiful from a distance, but they all knew what waited for them there. Billions of empty human shells walking around, working for the Dominion. And the ships, massive dark shadows hanging in the sky. "2 hours until we reach the harvester," Torres said. "Better get ready." Walker closed his eyes for a moment. 6 months ago, he had been a normal military officer running a small research base. Now, he was leading what might be humanity's last stand. "Captain," Reed's voice broke into his thoughts. "I need to show you something." She led him to the back of the shuttle where she had set up her equipment. On a small screen, strange patterns flowed and changed. "What am I looking at?" he asked. "This is a simulation of what happens when my code enters their network," she explained. "See these red points? Those are human minds waking up. But I noticed something strange." She pointed to areas where the red spread faster. "Some minds wake up more easily than others, and they help wake up the minds around them." "What does that mean?" Reed smiled. "It means some people are fighting back already, even inside the system. Musicians, artists, people with strong imaginations. Their minds are naturally more chaotic, harder for the Dominion to control. When we upload the code, they'll be the first to break free." For the first time in months, Walker felt real hope. Humans weren't just passive victims in the Dominion's machines. They were fighting back even if they didn't know it. As they approached Earth, they saw the damage up close. Cities had changed. Strange towers rose from the centers of once familiar skylines. Huge facilities had been built where parks and neighborhoods once stood. Endless lines of empty-eyed humans moved between buildings, working on the Dominion's projects. "There's our target," Torres said, pointing to the largest ship hovering over the city. It was massive, at least a mile long, with strange bulges and protrusions that pulsed with dim light. "Beginning transmission," Reed said, sending the stolen codes. "Now we wait." The silence stretched out. If the codes didn't work, they would be destroyed instantly. A light flashed on the control panel. Torres let out a breath. They accepted our codes. We're clear to dock. The shuttle moved toward the massive ship, feeling tiny next to it. A door opened in the side of the harvester, and Torres carefully guided them in. With a soft bump, they docked. They had made it inside. "Remember the plan," Walker said as they prepared to leave the shuttle. "Reed and I go to the neural core. Davis, you plant the explosives at these key points." He pointed to a rough map they had made. "Torres, you stay with the shuttle. Make sure we have a way out." "What if there is no way out?" Torres asked. Walker didn't answer. They all knew this might be a one-way trip. They stepped out of the shuttle into the harvester ship. The inside was worse than Walker had imagined. The walls looked almost alive, with pulsing tubes running along them. The floor was warm under their boots. Lights moved through the tubes, each one a piece of a human mind flowing through the Dominion systems. "This way," Reed whispered, following the signal on her small device. "The neural core should be central." They moved through corridors, hiding when strange insect-like maintenance drones passed by. Twice they saw Dominion guards, tall, thin, figures with too many joints in their limbs. Their faces were smooth except for small breathing holes where a nose and mouth should be. Finally, they reached a massive door. Beyond it, according to Reed's information, was the neural core. "Davis, set up watch here," Walker ordered. "Reed, how do we get in?" Reed studied the symbols on the door. "I think, yes, it's similar to their communication protocols." She pressed a sequence of symbols and the door slid open with a soft hiss. Inside was a sight none of them would ever forget. A vast chamber, bigger than a football stadium, filled with crystal-like structures. Each crystal hummed with light, thousands of them, reaching from floor to ceiling. And in each crystal, tiny sparks of light moved and pulsed. "Those are people," Torres whispered in horror. "Each light is a human mind," Reed finished. "Billions of them, all connected." Her face was pale but determined. "This is where we need to upload the code." Walker tore his eyes away from the terrible beauty of the neural core. "How long will it take?" Reed moved to what looked like a control panel. 5 minutes to connect to their system. Another 2 to upload the code. Then, we run. "You've got 7 minutes," Walker said, taking up a position by the door with his weapon ready. "Davis, Torres, be ready." Reed began, working, her fingers moving over the alien controls. Walker watched the door, his mind racing. 7 minutes until they changed everything or died trying. What they didn't know was that at that exact moment, Anna and her resistance fighters were launching their attack on a Dominion ground facility. The distraction they had planned was starting, and somewhere in the vast neural network all around them, human minds were already beginning to stir, sensing that something was about to change. Inside the heart of the enemy's ship, the last free humans prepared to take back their world. The Dominion had made a fatal mistake when they tried to use human minds as simple processing power. They were about to learn that you can cage the human body, but the human spirit is not so easily contained. Reed's fingers moved quickly over the alien controls. Sweat ran down her face as she worked to connect her device to the Dominion system. Walker stood guard by the door, weapon ready. Every few seconds he checked his watch. 3 minutes had passed already. "How's it coming?" he asked, keeping his voice low. "Almost there," Reed replied. "Their security is complex, but I'm finding paths through it." From his position, Walker could see the endless field of crystal structures holding human minds. Billions of tiny lights, each one a person. Somewhere in there were children, parents, friends, everyone they had known before the invasion. All trapped, used like batteries for the Dominion's machines. His radio crackled. "Captain," Davis's voice came through. "We have movement in the corridors, patrols heading this way." "How many?" "At least 6 guards, maybe more." Walker looked at Reed. "We need to speed this up." "I'm trying," she said, not looking up from her work. "I'm into their system now, starting the upload." A progress bar appeared on her device. 10%, 15%, 20%. Walker's radio crackled again. This time it was Torres from the shuttle. "Captain, something's happening. There's increased activity throughout the ship. I think they know we're here." As if to confirm this, alarms began to sound. A low, pulsing tone that seemed to come from the walls themselves. Red lights flashed in the corridors. "Reed, I know." She worked faster. The progress bar showed 40% now. "Just a little longer." Walker moved to the door where Davis was taking cover. "How close are they?" Davis pointed down the corridor. "End of the hall, maybe 2 minutes away." Walker made a quick decision. "Set the explosives now. If we can't complete the upload, we'll at least damage their neural core." Davis nodded and began placing the small explosive devices they had brought. Each one was small but powerful, designed to cause maximum damage to the alien technology. Reed called out, 65% uploaded." The sound of marching feet grew louder. The Dominion guards were almost at their position. Walker and Davis took aim at the corridor entrance. The first guard appeared, a tall, thin figure with too many joints in its limbs. Its face was smooth and featureless except for small breathing holes. It carried a weapon that looked like a long, curved piece of metal. Walker fired. The guard fell, but 2 more appeared behind it. 75%, Reed called. Davis fired at the new guards, hitting 1, but more kept coming. Soon they were in a full firefight, ducking behind the door frame as strange energy bolts hit the wall around them. "Davis, fall back to Reed's position." Walker ordered. "I'll cover you." Davis moved back into the neural core chamber while Walker fired continuously, keeping the guards pinned down. When Davis was safely in position, Walker followed, sealing the door behind him. "That won't hold them for long," he said. "How much more time?" 85%. 90%. Reed's eyes were fixed on her device. "Almost there." The door began to glow red hot as the guards worked to cut through it. Davis set the last explosive and moved to take position beside Walker. They would make their last stand here, protecting Reed until the upload was complete. 95%. The center of the door melted, forming a hole. A guard's weapon poked through, firing wildly into the chamber. Walker and Davis ducked behind crystal columns for cover. 8%. 99%. The door collapsed. Dominion guards poured into the chamber, their weapons firing. Walker and Davis returned fire, each shot taking down a guard, but there were too many. "It's done," Reed shouted triumphantly. "Upload complete." For a moment, nothing seemed to happen. The guards kept advancing. Walker wondered if they had failed after all. Then he noticed something strange. The lights in the crystal columns, the human minds, were pulsing differently. Faster, brighter. A guard near one of the columns suddenly stopped firing. It dropped its weapon and clutched its head, making a high-pitched sound that might have been a scream. Then another guard did the same, and another. "It's working," Reed cried out. "The human minds are waking up. They're disrupting the Dominion's network." Throughout the chamber, the crystal columns began to pulse with bright light. The advancing guards fell to their knees, their smooth faces twisting in what looked like pain. The ship itself seemed to shudder. "Now we run," Walker ordered. "Back, to the shuttle." They raced for the door, stepping over fallen guards. In the corridors, more Dominion forces were collapsing, overwhelmed by the chaos of billions of human minds suddenly fighting back. "Torres," Walker called into his radio. "Start." The engines were heading back now, but there was no answer. Just static. Torres, do you copy? Still nothing. We need to move faster, Walker told the others. Something's wrong. They ran through the twisting corridors of the harvester ship, following the path they had memorized. All around them, the ship was in chaos. Lights flickered. Strange sounds came from the walls. Maintenance drones crashed into each other or lay broken on the floor. When they reached the docking bay, they understood why Torres hadn't answered. A squad of Dominion guards had found the shuttle. Torres was pinned down inside, exchanging fire with the guards from the shuttle's doorway. "We need to help him," Davis said, raising his weapon. Walker stopped him. "Wait, look." The guards attacking the shuttle were beginning to falter. Like the ones in the neural core, they were clutching their heads, dropping their weapons. The Dominion's entire network was failing as human minds broke free. "Now!" Walker ordered, and they sprinted across the docking bay. Torres saw them coming and provided covering fire. They were almost at the shuttle when a guard, still fighting against the breakdown, fired one last shot. Davis cried out and fell. Walker turned back. Davis was on the ground, a smoking wound in his chest. "Go!" Davis gasped. "I'll cover you. We're not leaving you," Walker began, but Davis shook his head. "The explosive detonator," he said, pressing a small device into Walker's hand. "After you're clear, blow this place to hell." With a heavy heart, Walker took the detonator. Reed was already helping Torres defend the shuttle door. More guards were arriving, some still able to function despite the chaos in their network. "Go," Davis said again, his voice weaker. "Finish this." Walker nodded once, gripping Davis's shoulder. Then he ran for the shuttle, covering Reed as she boarded. Torres was already in the pilot seat, starting the launch sequence. "Davis?" Torres asked as Walker came aboard. Walker shook his head. He stayed behind to give us a chance. Through the view screen, they could see Davis propped against a wall, firing at approaching guards with his last strength. The shuttle engines fired. They began to move away from the docking bay. Walker stood at the view screen, watching as his friend grew smaller in the distance. When they were clear of the ship, he looked down at the detonator in his hand. "For Earth," he whispered and pressed the button. Inside the harvester ship, the explosives detonated. The neural core erupted in flames. Then the entire ship began to break apart. As their shuttle sped away, Walker watched the massive harvester collapse in on itself, one down. But their fight was just beginning. And on Earth below, something was happening. In cities across the planet, empty shells that had once been human began to stop, to remember, to wake up. Their small shuttle raced away from the exploding harvester ship. Walker, Reed, and Torres watched through the view screen as pieces of the massive alien vessel broke apart and fell toward Earth like burning meteors. "Davis," Torres said quietly, his hands tight on the controls. "He saved us all." Walker nodded, his face grim. "And we'll make sure his sacrifice means something." He turned to Reed. "Did it work? Will the code spread to the other ships?" Reed was already checking her devices. "Yes, I think so. The code is moving through their network. Look." She pointed to the view screen. In the distance, other harvester ships were showing signs of distress. Lights flickered across their massive hulls. Some were starting to drift from their positions. "Where should we go?" Torres asked. "Back to the moon?" Walker thought for a moment. "No. We need to see what's happening on the ground. Take us to Anna's location." Torres changed course, heading toward the hidden base where Anna's resistance fighters operated. As they flew over what had once been a major city, they saw something amazing. People were stopping in the streets. The empty-eyed humans who had been working like robots suddenly froze. Some fell to their knees. Others looked around in confusion. They were waking up. "It's working," Reed said, her voice filled with hope for the first time in months. "The code is freeing them." But not everything was going smoothly. As the shuttle flew lower, they saw chaos erupting. Some humans, newly awakened and confused, were fighting each other. Dominion ground forces, the ones still functioning, were trying to control the situation. using weapons to round up humans who were breaking free. This could turn bad quickly, Walker said. We need to find Anna and coordinate with her people. They landed the shuttle in a hidden area outside the city, close to the coordinates Anna had given them. As they stepped out, weapons ready, they were met by a group of armed humans. Anna was at the front, a scar running down the side of her face. "You did it," she said, lowering her weapon when she recognized Walker. "We saw the harvester ship go down." "At a cost," Walker replied. "Davis didn't make it." Anna's face showed respect. "We've lost many too, but now we have a chance." She led them to a makeshift command center in an abandoned building. Maps covered the walls marking Dominion positions and resistance hideouts. "The situation is changing by the minute," Anna explained. "People are waking up all over the city, all over the world from what we can tell. But it's creating chaos, and the Dominion is fighting back." Reed studied the maps. "What about the other harvester ships?" "Some are failing like the one you destroyed," Anna said. "Others seem to be cutting themselves off from the network, trying to stop the code from spreading." Just then, a resistance fighter burst into the room. "You need to see this," he said urgently. "All of you." They followed him outside where a large screen had been set up, showing intercepted Dominion communications. On the screen was a new alien ship entering Earth's atmosphere. It was different from the harvesters, darker, more angular, radiating power. "What is that?" Torres asked. "The Supreme Command ship," Reed said, her face pale. "The center of their entire operation." As they watched, the new ship positioned itself high above the planet. The remaining harvester ships began to move toward it, forming a protective ring. "They're consolidating," Walker said, "cutting their losses." Anna pointed to energy readings on a nearby monitor. "They're powering up something big." Reed analyzed the readings, her eyes widening. "It's a purge weapon. They're going to sterilize the planet." She looked at the others. They'd rather kill everyone than lose control. A heavy silence fell over the group. After coming so far, after their first real victory, they now faced total defeat. "How long do we have?" Walker asked. "Hours, maybe less," Reed replied. Walker looked at the people around him, the last free humans and those newly awakened. He made a decision. "We need to attack that command ship," he said. "Now, while they're still vulnerable from the network disruption." "Attack?" Torres stared at him. "With what? Our shuttle can't even get close to something that powerful." Anna stepped forward. "We have something." She led them to another building where, hidden under camouflage netting, sat a Dominion transport ship. Larger than their shuttle, armed with weapons. "We captured it 3 months ago," she explained. "We've been studying it, learning how to fly it." Walker walked around the ship, assessing it. "This could work. We could get close enough to board the command ship." "Board it?" Torres looked shocked. "That's suicide." "Do you have a better idea?" Walker asked. "If that purge weapon fires, everyone dies. All of this was for nothing." No one argued. They all knew he was right. Reed spoke up. "I can modify the awakening code, make it stronger, more targeted. If we can reach their central command system, we hit them where it hurts most." Walker finished. "We wake up every mind they've ever captured." They worked quickly, preparing for the mission. Reed modified her code while Torres and Anna's engineers prepared the captured transport ship. Resistance fighters brought weapons and supplies. Everyone knew what was at stake. As they worked, more reports came in from around the world. The awakening was spreading, but so was the chaos, and the Supreme Command ship was nearly ready to fire its weapon. 3 hours later, Walker stood before the assembled team. 20 volunteers, the best from both his crew and Anna's resistance. "This mission has one goal," he told them. "Stop that weapon from firing and free the rest of humanity. We might not all come back, but if we fail, there's nothing to come back to anyway." One by one, they boarded the transport ship. Reed sat in what passed for a co-pilot's seat, her modified code ready. Torres took the controls, having spent hours learning the ship's systems. Anna approached Walker before he boarded. "I'll coordinate ground forces," she said. "If you succeed, when you succeed, we'll need to restore order quickly." Walker nodded. "Take care of our people." "Good luck, Captain," she replied, stepping back. The transport ship's engines fired up with a deep hum. As it rose into the air, the remaining humans watched, their faces showing a mix of hope and fear. This was humanity's last stand, their final chance to take back their world. Inside the ship, Walker looked at his team. They were tired, scared, but determined. The Dominion had tried to erase humanity. Instead, they had only made humans more determined to fight back. "Set course for the Supreme Command ship," he ordered Torres. "It's time to call the shots. They tried to erase us. From now on, we call the shots." Part 5. We call the shots. The captured Dominion transport ship climbed higher through Earth's atmosphere. Through the view screen, Walker could see the massive Supreme Command ship growing, larger. It was unlike any Dominion vessel they had seen before. Darker, with sharp angles and a surface that seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it. "Are they tracking us?" Walker asked Torres, who sat at the controls. Torres checked the systems. "Not yet. Our ID codes are still working. They think we're one of theirs returning to the command ship." Reed looked up from her work on the modified code. "That won't last long. Once we're closer, they'll scan us more carefully." Walker nodded. "Then we need to be ready." He turned to the rest of the team, 20 of the best fighters from both his crew and Anna's resistance. "Check your weapons. Remember your positions. When we dock, we move fast." The plan was dangerous but simple. They would dock with the Supreme Command ship using the stolen transport. Once inside, they would split into 3 teams. Reed's team would head for the central command system to upload the modified awakening code. Walker's team would find and disable the purge weapon. The third team would secure their escape route. As they approached the command ship, an alarm sounded on their control panel. "They're scanning us," Torres warned, starting to ask questions. "Get ready," Walker told everyone. "It's about to get loud." The transport ship shook as the command ship's tractor beam locked onto them, pulling them into a docking bay against their will. "Weapons ready," Walker ordered as they were dragged inside the massive vessel. The moment their ship touched, down in the docking bay, Dominion forces surrounded them, dozens of guards with weapons aimed at the transport. "Now!" Walker shouted, and Torres fired the transport's weapons. The sudden attack caught the Dominion guards by surprise. Many fell in the first volley. The humans burst from the transport, firing as they moved to take cover behind cargo containers and support pillars. "Reed, go!" Walker shouted over the gunfire. "We'll cover you!" Reed nodded and led her team toward one of the exit corridors. Walker's team provided covering fire, taking down guards as they appeared. "This way to the weapons. Control," Walker called to his team. Using maps Reed had compiled from intercepted Dominion data, they raced through the corridors of the command ship. The interior was strange, darker and more organic looking than the harvester ships. The walls seemed to pulse with energy. Lights moved through transparent tubes in the ceiling, more human minds flowing through the Dominion's network. As they ran, they noticed something odd. Some of the Dominion guards were already acting strangely, moving erratically, dropping weapons, clutching their heads. "The code is already affecting them," one of Walker's team said. "The disruption from the harvester ships must be spreading." "Good," Walker replied. "But we still need to stop that weapon." They reached what appeared to be a massive control room. Inside were not the usual Dominion guards, but smaller creatures with large heads and spindly limbs. These were different. Commanders, not soldiers. When the aliens saw the humans, they didn't reach for weapons. Instead, one stepped forward. To Walker's shock, it spoke in a raspy but understandable voice. "You are too late," it said. "The purification has begun." On a large screen above them, energy readings showed the purge weapon powering up. It would fire in minutes, destroying all life on Earth. "Stop it," Walker demanded, aiming his weapon at the alien commander. "Now." The alien made a sound that might have been laughter. "We would rather destroy this world," then lose it to chaos. Walker fired, taking down the alien. His team rushed the controls, trying to make sense of the alien technology. "I can't." "Stop it," one of Walker's team said frantically. "The controls are locked." Walker's radio crackled. It was Reed. "Captain, we've reached the central system, starting the upload now." "Reed, the weapon is about to fire. Can you stop it?" "Maybe," her voice came back. "If the code works fast enough, it might disrupt their entire network before the weapon can activate." Walker looked at the countdown on the screen. 3 minutes until the purge weapon fired. "Do it," he ordered. "We'll try to buy you time here." More Dominion forces were arriving at the control room. Walker and his team took defensive positions, firing at each new wave of enemies, but they were outnumbered. 2 minutes to purge weapon activation, a computerized voice announced throughout the ship. Walker's radio crackled again. "Upload at 60%, Reed reported. "Need more time." Just then, something unexpected happened. The ship shuddered violently. Warning lights flashed throughout the control room. "What was that?" Walker asked. One of his team checked a nearby monitor. "Other ships. They're attacking the command ship. Dominion vessels firing on each other." On the screen, they could see harvester ships turning their weapons on the Supreme Command ship. Some fired wildly into space. Others were drifting out of control. "It's working," Walker realized. "The awakened minds are taking control of the ships." 90 seconds to purge weapon activation, the computer announced. Walker's radio came to life again. "Upload at 85%, Reed said. "Almost there." The battle raged on. Walker lost 2 more of his team to Dominion weapons, but they held their ground, protecting the control room as Reed's code continued to upload. 60 seconds to purge weapon activation. "Upload at 95%. Reed's voice had a note of triumph now. "Just a few more seconds." Walker looked around at his surviving team members, at the fallen Dominion guards, at the strange alien machinery all around them. After months of hiding, of planning, of fighting, it all came down to these final moments. 30 seconds to purge weapon activation. "Upload complete," Reed shouted through the radio. "The code is in their entire system." For a moment, nothing seemed to happen. The countdown continued. Walker's heart sank. Had they failed after all? Then, everything changed at once. The lights throughout the ship flickered. The strange tubes in the ceiling glowed brighter than before. The remaining Dominion guards dropped to the floor, writhing in what looked like pain. "What's happening?" Walker asked into his radio. "It's not just Earth." Reed's voice was full of wonder. "The code is awakening minds throughout their entire empire. Every being they've ever captured is breaking free." The countdown froze at 10 seconds. Then, the screen went dark. The purge weapon powered down. The ship's artificial gravity fluctuated, causing everyone to float momentarily before settling back to normal. "We did it," Walker breathed. "We stopped them." Over the next hour, they regrouped. Reed's team had made an even more amazing discovery in the central system room. "The Dominion has been doing this for centuries," she explained, showing Walker data screens, capturing species across the galaxy, harvesting minds. Humans weren't the first, just the latest. "And now they're all waking up?" Walker asked. Reed nodded. "All of them. Every mind they ever captured is breaking free. It's causing a cascade, failure throughout their entire empire." They made their way back to the transport ship. The docking bay was in chaos, Dominion guards either unconscious or acting erratically, unable to stop them. As they lifted off from the command ship, they saw the results of their victory. The massive alien vessel was adrift, its systems failing. Other harvester ships were in similar states. Some crashed into each other. Others drifted toward Earth's atmosphere where they would burn up. When they landed back at the Resistance base, Anna was waiting for them. "It worked," she said simply. "People everywhere are waking up. The Dominion forces are collapsing." 1 month later, Walker stood on a hilltop overlooking a city. Humans were rebuilding. The empty-eyed shells were gone. People were themselves again. Some had lost memories. Some were traumatized. But they were free. Reed joined him on the hill. The alien technology is helping us rebuild faster, she said. And we've made contact with other species the Dominion enslaved. We're not alone in the universe anymore. Walker nodded, looking up at the stars. They tried to erase us, he said quietly. Reed smiled. And now we call the shots. In the distance, a former Dominion ship, now repurposed by humans, rose into the sky. It wasn't heading to the moon or Mars, but much further. Humanity's first diplomatic mission to meet other liberated worlds. The Dominion had wanted to use human minds as simple tools. Instead, they had given